I decided to rework one of my songs and completely reimagine it into a Lizzy McAlpine style track. Here's what the original sounded like. And here's a bit of what the new version sounds like.
And there's too many days and not enough innocence.
I've been listening to a lot of Lizzy McAlpine lately, and I've always been such a big fan of her work. So I thought, what would it sound like if she had written one of my songs? So to find out, I took one of my original songs, completely broke it down and rebuilt it from the ground up, and reworked it into this Lizzy McAlpine style track. So I thought today I'd show you what that sounds like and how I pulled it off. So if you're new here, my name is Joe and I'm an indie pop musician from the UK. Now my music doesn't really sound like Lizzy McAlpine's, but let's waste no time. I'm going to jump into the Logic project for this session and I'll show you exactly how I put this together. The first thing I knew that I needed to do was tune my guitar differently, because Lizzy McAlpine is known for using these alternate tunings on her guitars. It also creates that really warm feeling in her music. Pair that with the raw vocals and the minimal production, and that was kind of what my goal was here. I'm not typically someone who plays in alternate tuning, so it did take me a while to get my head around this, but what I did was tune my guitar to Dadgad, which sounds like that. Dadgad is very popular in like folk kind of music, so that was a good first step. I had originally intended to learn the chords to my song in this Dadgad tuning, but I ended up just playing something and thought, well, it sounds melancholic enough, I'll keep that. So that was this kind of progression here, which is like a D to G, I think. Anyway, I had the chord progression down. I just didn't want this to turn into like an acoustic only track though. So the first thing I did was actually jump into Logic here and craft out the drum groove. And I went for like a real minimal drum groove, as you'll hear here. So this is my drum group that I've got going on here right now. And you can hear it's literally just kick and snare for the most part. Then you've got little fills. So I put in some fills here and there. So anyway, I had the drum groove. You can hear it's quite chill, laid back. You kind of can just sit back in it. I knew the guitars would go really nicely in there. So next thing I did was record those acoustic guitars, which sound like this. I have stereo mic'd them, so SM7B on the 12th fret. Then I actually used this Aston Starlight as like my bass pickup. So I shoved that at like near the sound hole of the guitar. Had the SM7B at the 12th fret and then just stereo recorded it. So you're getting a lot more of the bass tones from this, whereas you're getting a lot more of the treble from that. Kind of worked in my favour. I don't think this is like best practice, or these are probably the best mics to use for this, but I knew I wanted like quite an intimate feel. And I also didn't really want to overthink the production, because I think that's another part of the charm of what Lizzy McAlpine stuff has got, is that I get this real sense of like pure musicianship. There's not much going into the recording of things. It's kind of stick a mic in front of something and start recording. I could be wrong, maybe there's more going on there. It certainly sounds amazing, but it does have like that lo-fi bedroom pop kind of feel, which is what I kind of wanted here. So yeah, I wasn't trying to get too much into my engineering head on this one. Anyway, we have the guitars recorded and we have the drums still going. Processing wise, I do have quite a bit going on the acoustic guitars here, and again I'm just doing that at the group level. I'm not actually doing it on the individual tracks themselves, so I'm just using some EQ to scoop out the low end and brighten it up. Got a compressor, got some saturation as well, because again I wanted to go for a bit more of a dirty sound on it, so I just wanted to beef it up a little bit with some saturation. I actually have a match EQ here on these guitars as well, and the reason I'm using that is because what I did was import a track of Lizzy McAlpine's into my project, which is one of these two tracks you can see at the top here. And there was a part of the song where she was just playing acoustic guitar. So what I did was I soloed it, took a print of that EQ and in terms of what that would sound like, and I just printed it onto my guitar just to get closer to the tone that she's got in her guitar. Again, it didn't really translate that well. Hers was a lot more mellow and darker, but I got pretty close with the match EQ. Going back to the drum group, in terms of processing, I've got a bit of compression on here. I've got some tube EQ, just to give it a bit more character. Adding even more character with Decapitator. You'll probably notice this a lot through this session. A lot of this track just has Decapitator and compression amongst other stuff. Another thing you'll notice that I use all over this project and in my mixes in general nowadays is Track Spacer here. This is an incredible plugin. If you're a music producer out there and you're watching this, I highly recommend you get yourself this plugin, because essentially what it does is it carves out space in the mix depending on what you're sidechaining it to. So in this case, I wanted to make sure that my acoustic guitars were shining through very well. And of course, I could go through and meticulously EQ it to make sure that the drums are sitting in one frequency band and then the guitars are sitting in another. But if you use Track Spacer like this, what you do is you sidechain it to your guitars or to whatever you want to move out of the way. In my case, I did do it to the guitars. So I've now got the guitars here and the drums, and you can see the drums are reacting to the sound of the acoustic guitars. So whenever there's something that's in the way, it's kind of ducking itself down. Very handy tool. Highly recommend it. You're going to see me using a lot of it today, but let's keep moving. Next up in this session is a bunch of electric guitars I did. These were recorded on my Epiphone Dot. This is my Epiphone Dot. I've had her for a very, very long time. Yeah, she's basically on every single song of mine. If you hear electric guitar, I only own this electric guitar, so it's probably this one. Again, there's probably guitars out there that would give me more unique tones that are closer to this Lizzy McApline sound that I'm going for. But I only have that guitar, so it'll have to do. I recorded this main riff line. I've stacked these guitars up, so I've recorded it 3 times. It looks like I've done... So that's the main line, and I might have done an octave above that. Oh, an octave below, sorry. Yeah. Yep, so we've just got electric guitars, pretty plain and simple. They're drenched in reverb and they've got a bit of echo boy going on them, so just to give them a doubler effect, just to give them a bit more width as well. The acoustic guitars and that main drum groove are kind of driving most of this song. Everything else is just dropping in and out as the song progresses, just to create a bit more dynamics in there. Next up, we got the vocal. This is my main vocal here.
Tell me that it's alright.
And what I did with this one, again, I recorded this on the SM7B, up close and personal. I wanted this to be a real intimate vocal. Although my vocal style is not very similar to Lizzy McAlpine's, I wanted it to be as breathy as I could get it, as in your face as I could get it.
The water only ripples.
And it's very dry as well. I haven't done much. I mean, you can see there's tons of plugins on there, but in terms of what's going on effects-wise, there's nothing that's actually changing the tone of the sound too much. The reverbs are really dry, it's all very confined. In terms of what's going on the vocal, I've got pitch correction, I've got a few different EQs that are just carving out things that I don't like, and then I've got some boosts as well there. I've got a de-esser, which I'm using the Sibilance de-esser from Waves. I've got RVox on here, which is my first compressor. Then I've got the CLA 76, again, arguably a little bit too compressed for a Lizzy McAlpine track, but again, I've got quite a loud vocal compared to Lizzy McAlpine, so I just wanted to make sure it was super controlled. While still sounding like that indie folk vibe I'm going for, I still wanted it to feel like a me song. But the aim here was just keeping everything as dry as possible in terms of delays and reverb. So I've got a decapitator on there as well, just to add some saturation. And I've got fresh air as well, just to brighten up the vocal a little bit more. And as I said, I've got a reverb going on here, and it looks like it's just a Space Designer wooden studio room. So, pretty simple. And that processing is the main processing for most of the lead vocals in this song. Next we have some backing vocals, which are like this. So these are a bit more processed. These, I kind of knew they were going to be ducked way in the background, so they're more just there to add some flavour and fill in some gaps in the verse, so you can hear. Yeah, so they're just adding flavour. I've got more processing on them, as I said, got more compression on them. Decapitator again. I've got micro shifter, so that's just giving them a bit more width, making them doubled and a bit of a chorus effect on them. Some EQ for some tidying, and again I've got Track Spacer again. So this time the way I'm using Track Spacer is I'm making sure that it doesn't get in the way of the lead vocal. So again, I've just sidechained it to my lead vocal in the verse, and it just means that whenever those lead vocals are coming in, the backing vocals kind of back off a little bit, so you can see when it comes in. So you can still hear the backing vocals because I've dialed it back, but they're just making sure that they're not clashing too much. Anyway, after the verse, we get back to this kind of refrain thing that I wrote, which was based around those electric guitars. So you'll hear it here now. So yeah, I've just, to be honest, doubled a lot of what the guitars are doing here. I've got vocals doing the same thing now, so you've got a group of me. Another band I really love are Wilco, and they do a lot of tracking their guitars and then kind of blending the sound of them with vocals. That's kind of what I was going for here. So you can hear it kind of creates its own weird meld. You can barely hear the vocals, but if you take them away, you notice the difference. Finally, we've got some bass entering the song. I've got this Paul McCartney style Epiphone bass. Again, it's the only bass guitar I own, so it is the bass that I use on every single song. From here on out, the bass is just here supporting the acoustic guitars and the drums throughout the rest of the track. Processing wise, I think I actually just used a preset here. So yeah, I've just used like a hi-fi DI thing on the bass. Got some pianos, nothing fancy here, just some chords. And then a piano line that's following the lead vocal there as well. I did the same with a glockenspiel. Almost sounds like Christmas. And this is where it starts to get a bit more electric guitar heavy. So obviously we've had electric guitars already in the track, but now we've got ones that are really adding flavour to the rest of the track. And they're kind of like, if the vocals and the acoustic guitars and the drums are the main characters, then all of these electric guitars are like the background characters. I've got one here, again, I've just used a preset. By the looks of it, it's just a Logic preset here. It's a Cinnamon Tweed, and that is doing this. Just creating a bit more drive in those moments there. Another electric guitar, different preset. That's just doing the strums. Then we've got another guitar, which is, I think this is a reverby one. Yeah, so you've got like a bit of a spacey thing going on here. Sound Toys made this plugin called Space Blender free. It's essentially just a reverb, but it's like a huge, spacey, weird, warped reverb. I haven't really learned how to use it yet, to be honest. I probably just threw a preset on it because I was using it in the moment and I was like, this sounds cool, I'll put this on here. But that's there, and it's really just creating some space in the track and making it feel a bit dreamier. So that's all the guitars there together. Next we're going into verse 2, and in verse 2 it's pretty much the same, to be honest. We've got a lot of the same characters here.
When the day is done.
So you've got lead vocals, you've got the drums and etc. But you've got these nice guitars here, which I really like. Which are these? These are quite Wilco-y actually. So you can see I'm kind of like already veering off from this Lizzy McApline thing. And I think this is what's cool about music, is that you have an idea and you shoot for it, and you might not get the exact idea that you're looking for, but this was inspired by that initial idea, and I'm kind of just, I've got a melting pot of lots of different inspirations. So as I'm going through this track, I'm like, oh, I'm trying to achieve X. This is how I achieve that. And I knew that I wanted something to create a different tone in the verse here. I think a common thing in a Lizzy McApline track is that you go through all of the different emotions, and these guitars here, I knew that they would help support a different emotion. This verse feels a bit more confident because of these guitars here. So if you have a listen.
When the day is done, I'm so unaware, and I'm fine.
I'm a big fan of dynamics. I like things to evolve over time. So to have that second verse just the same as the first one wouldn't really scratch my brain in the right way. Next up, we got my favourite moment in the song, which is this first chorus. Sounds like this.
And there's too many days, and not enough innocence, clipping my wings on a forest fire.
A lot going on here, but again, it's not stuff that's trying to take the spotlight too much. You're still pretty much hearing mainly the guitars and the drums and the bass and the vocals, of course, but you've just got all those backing characters coming in, all these different guitars that are giving a different energy to the track. Joining the main cast here, we have these Moon guitars that I got here. And these are samples. This is actually from Labs by Spitfire. I just put them in here. So they're just creating some nice harmonics in the chorus, almost like ear candy. You can't really hear, they're just kind of buried in the background there, but they're just adding more guitars. I'm just going to bring in all the guitars together so you can hear them. So you can hear all the guitars here. I just like that driving energy it's bringing, because obviously if you were making pop music, which is what I typically do, I would usually create that driving sensation by having the bass do like a pumping thing, which is what the original song does. But in this one, I wanted to make sure that it was just nice layers. So we're just giving the sensation of that pulsing, of that driving, but you're not then using like a big wobbly bass to do that. I don't know if this is very Lizzy McAlpine, but I just love mellotrons. I think they add like this melancholy to anything that you put them in, and so I recorded this. It's just MIDI. I think I'm using Contact there, so I've got Contact 7, and that's got a really nice stock mellotron string thingamajig. On the chorus, I've obviously got a lot of vocals going on. A lead vocal, a left and a right, which is basically just a copy of the lead vocal. Then I've got like a low octave in there as well, and then I've got some harmonies. But this is what they're doing here. And what I have done here, again, just to make them feel a bit bigger, I've added a tiny little bit of delay to the vocals, and that's just going to a bus here. Echo Boy is the delay I'm using. Yeah, so I'm kind of automating that send here because you've got delay, 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 drop here. It then goes dry. And then for the refrain, we go back into like reverby, spacey. And again, it's not so spacey that it doesn't sound too unnatural. It's giving it a bit of like a vintage feel. I wanted to create a little bit of a difference between the verse and the chorus, but the lead vocal there is actually just the dry vocal for the most part. In that refrain, middle, whatever you want to call it, you've also got two more guitar layers coming in. You've got this guy who's kind of like the lead here. It's kind of like the lead guitar line. This guy. This is again using that Space Blender plugin from Soundtoys. Finally, coming out of that middle, I wanted to give the acoustic guitars a moment to shine because they were kind of the starting point of all of this. So I just dropped it down to the acoustic and the vocal here. And again, super dry, super in your face. And then chorus again. And really, that's it. But before we wrap this up, let's have a listen to the final version of this track. Here is my song Evergreen, Reimagined.
Tell me that it's alright. The water only ripples when it's still. The heaviness is all mine. Still I can never predict when I'll spill. When the day is done, I'm so unaware, and I'm fine. It's like trying to stare at the skyline from a rocking chair. So tell me that it's alright, 'cause the water only ripples when it's still. And there's too many days and not enough innocence, clipping my wings on a forest fire. Set me ablaze while keeping me distant. It's rare to find a sea so evergreen. Evergreen, evergreen, evergreen. Evergreen, evergreen, evergreen. Evergreen, evergreen, evergreen. Evergreen, evergreen, evergreen. Tell me that it's alright, 'cause the water only ripples when it's still. And there's too many days and not enough innocence, clipping my wings on a forest fire. Set me ablaze while keeping me distant. It's rare to find a sea so evergreen.
If you go back and listen to the original version of this song, you'll notice that lyrically not much has actually changed, but melody-wise I've changed it quite a bit. The phrasings are still the same, but the actual melodies I'm using are different to kind of fit this moody feel that we've got here. And I feel like it's worked really well for this track, because part of my artistry, let's say, is that I will have introspective and deep lyrics backed by like these upbeat indie pop instrumentals that I make. So taking those lyrics and applying them to something like this, I feel like it's really opened up the meaning of this song for me and almost has given it a different perspective. So all that to say, reimagining tracks is really fun. Sometimes it can feel like when you make a song, that has to be the final version, you know, like the original version of this song is on my album that's coming out. I finished it a couple of years ago and I've always loved it, but hearing it like this, it's now just become something else. This is like one of my favourite versions of this song now, which is cool, and I wouldn't have got to this version without having that original version. Me revisiting this like 2 years later feels really good. I think it's a testament to how my music taste has changed as well as how I've changed. Anyway, if you want to hear this track, it's now up on Spotify or wherever you get your music. Just search Joe Turone Evergreen or Evergreen Reimagined, and then you will find this song. I'll leave a link in the description as well so you can find it down there. Anyway, this has been fun. Thank you for watching. If you think I should rework another one of my songs or just do a song in a style, let me know. I'm open to any suggestions. Maybe I'll turn one of my tracks into like a hyper pop track or a heavy metal song. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.